Everyone. So welcome to Black History, Black Stories. We're so excited to have you here tonight with us celebrating our first night of Black History Month by sharing some really great books with you. So before we get started, I'm going to go over a few features of our Zoom program environment with you. Tonight's program is in a webinar format, so your camera and microphone are not active, although you can see and hear us, we can't see and hear you, and you can't see each other. So just feel free to kick back and relax and listen to some book titles. Now, if you do have some questions or comments for us, you can enter those in the chat. So the chat box icon looks like a little speech bubble with the word chat underneath it. You may need to either wiggle your cursor or lightly tap on the screen in order to get that icon bar to appear. But just tap on the icon and the chat box will open up and you can type in your questions or comments and click enter. Those comments will go only to our panelists tonight, and we will be taking some questions, some Q&A time at the end. So just enter your comments or questions and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So tonight's presenters are Tammy from Indian Trails. I'm Sarah from Adult Services. We have Yoli from Lewis and Clark and Harry also from Adult Services. And they'll each be saying their name as they start to present. Also, if you did register for tonight's program before, say, like 1 o'clock today, you likely got an email from me that had the handouts for tonight's presentation. So if you do want to keep those handouts handy, you can follow along at home. If you didn't get that email or you didn't get the handouts, no big deal. I'm going to be sending a follow-up email tomorrow that will also have the handouts attached. But yeah, this is the order we'll be presenting in if you want to have those handouts ready to go. You can check out all of tonight's titles in print or e-media, depending on what formats they're available in. Our library catalog is there, as well as Hoopla and Overdrive are our two most common e-media formats that you can look up. Overdrive is available through the Libby app. If you have any questions about that, just let us know. Okay, so we're going to start off with Tammy from Indian Trails. So go ahead and take it away, Tammy.
All righty, good evening, everyone. Again, I am Tammy from Indian Trails, and these are my picks for Black History Month this year. My first one is The Gateway to Equality, Black Women and the Struggle for Economic Justice in St. Louis by Dr. Kiona Irwin. I first saw Dr. Kiona Irwin, who is a St. Louis native and a professor at the University of Missouri Columbia, present a lecture on this book, and it piqued my interest because I'm a native St. Louisan and I love history. This book was named by the Huffington Post as one of the 6 new notable books on Black women's history in 2017. It explores the Black women of St. Louis and their struggle for economic justice from the 1930s to the 1960s. So this was before if you're familiar with St. Louis, you know about the tenement strikes and Pruitt-Igoe. This was before that time. This was before that time. During those times, St. Louis attracted more Black women than Black men to the area because of industries such as textiles and food processing, as this was also the period of the Great Migration. Along with the job growth came the fight for equal rights and equal pay. What I like about this book is that it gives you a comprehensive economic history that starts in the 1930s. Sometimes we don't get that history. We often start right at the 60s with the civil rights movement. I learned about so many women who I didn't know, like Orally Malone and the women of the Housewives League, who mobilized Black professional women, and they staged a protest against Woolworth stores in 1932 in an effort to hire Black women for sales positions. If you are looking for a book about the African-American experience in St. Louis that focuses on Black women, this book is for you, okay? My next book, is Rebel by Beverly Jenkins. Let me say, Beverly Jenkins is the queen mother of African-American historical romance. If the cover don't grab you, then I don't know what will. This book takes us to New Orleans after the Civil War. We meet Valinda, who is a teacher of newly freed slaves. After her school is destroyed and she is badly beaten, Captain LaVage rescues her and is instantly mesmerized by her. His mother also begins the duty of being matchmaker, but there is only one problem. Belinda is already engaged and set to marry Cole, who will soon return from Paris. Let me read you an excerpt. The passion he put into words, coupled with his accent, was such a heady combination. If he professed the moon was made of ice cream, she'd ask for a bowl and a spoon. Oh, what will Belinda do? Will she marry Cole, who has a secret of his own? Or will she marry the gorgeous Captain Drake LaVage? So read this book and find out. It's a good one. Let's see. My next one is Fly Girl by Sherry Smith. This is a teen fiction book that I ran across after reading the backstory in the Book Pages magazine. Ida has always wanted to be a pilot, just like her father. During this time, which is World War II, Black women weren't allowed to fly. Then the Army forms the WASP, which stands for Women Air Force Service Pilots. Now, Ida can join on one condition: that she uses the color of her skin to pass as a white woman. Will she lose her identity while pursuing her dreams? This book explores the ideal of passing, which a lot of Black people did in order to have a better life. With the ideal of passing came many, many conflicts and disagreements. I really, really enjoyed this book because along with Ida, it has a great cast of characters that pull you into their lives and you become part of the story. All right. Wow. My next one is Sugar by Bernice L. McFadden. Sugar, oh, sweet sugar. See, Sugar has sashayed into Bigelow, Arkansas with her red high heels and red lips, and the townspeople are saying a storm blew in. Sugar is definitely a storm who was abandoned by her mother and raised by 3 prostitutes. She wants to change her life, and the opportunity comes when she is willed a house by her mother, who has passed away. Her next door neighbor is a lady named Pearl. When Sugar befriends Pearl, a nice church-going woman who is well-respected in the community, the town erupts into endless gossip. The townspeople want Sugar out of their town. As their friendship blossoms, Sugar finds out that Pearl is still grieving her daughter Jude, who was murdered 15 years before. It's almost like Pearl begins to see Jude in Sugar. Will the townspeople drive Sugar out of town, or will Sugar and Pearl's friendship prevail? This was Bernice L. McFadden's debut novel, which the Chicago Defender calls a literary explosion. There's also a special 20th anniversary edition that was published with a foreword by actress Kimberly Elise. Oh yes, the original Black Elite, Daniel Murray and the Story of a Forgotten Era by Elizabeth Dowling Taylor. I love reading about the Black Elite and the Black socialites. This book gives you a glimpse into the life of Daniel Murray, who was born free in 1851. In 1899, he was working at the Library of Congress as an assistant librarian. His wife, Anna, was also a Black socialite who was also a teacher. This book explores his life and the life of what are known as the Talented 10th, which also included W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and Mary Church Terrell. Listen to this excerpt. Daniel Murray's greater goal, his long-range vision, was to be the vanguard of merit-based recognition for every American of color. The rise of those in Murray's Black elite circle was realized rather than potential. They were living proof that African Americans did not lack the ability to become useful contributors to mainstream society. This is a great book if you want to read about the Black elite. It's just great, and it pulls the Black elite in with politics. It's just a great book. It's very well written. My last book, but last but not least, is a new one, Liberty by Caitlin Greenidge. Named one of the most anticipated books of 2021. I can't wait to read it. By the Oprah magazine and Harper's Bazaar. Caitlin Greenidge Liberty tells the coming of age story of a young Black woman living in Brooklyn, New York during the Reconstruction. Her mother expects her to become a physician just like her. But Liberty dreams of something else, and that something else is music. Not to mention that her skin, unlike her mother's, is of a much, much darker hue, which causes more conflict between Liberty and her mother, and the community with whom her mother has embraced, despite their dislike of Liberty because of the color of her skin. After Liberty is kicked out of Cunningham College, she returns to Brooklyn. With her return to Brooklyn comes a marriage proposal from a Haitian man. She goes to Haiti with him only to find out that she does not have the freedom that she imagined. This is a beautiful coming of age story that has many layers. Like I said, I'm looking forward to reading this book. It's slated to come out this March. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tammy. That was awesome. Okay. So I'm Sarah, I'm from Adult Services, and I have my picks up next. So my first pick is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. I actually highlighted The Prophets at our very first virtual book talk program back in May, which was Lit Lovers. That program is all forthcoming picks. And at the time, January seemed so far away, but this book was truly worth the wait. So the author, Robert Jones Jr., is better known by his online persona, Son of Baldwin, and his first novel shows that he has all of the lyricism and the insight of his role model, James Baldwin. The Prophet centers on two young men who are the slaves assigned to animal care on the Halifax plantation in Mississippi. They are in love, and this relationship is really the only thing that allows them some comfort in their lives and some sense of having like a thing just to themselves. But it's also really incredibly dangerous. And the reactions to their relationship affect and are affected by the power dynamics and hierarchies of plantation life. And this novel is very stylistically complex. It depicts how all of this plays out from multiple perspectives, and each character is just really expertly given nuances and individuality by Jones. Each chapter is named after and includes themes from different books of the Bible. And there are also these sort of poetic, prophetic interludes by a group called the Seven, who act something like a chorus through the novel. This book is one to sit with after reading, and really an important contribution to the LGBTQ African American historical fiction genre. All right, my next pick is Lazaretto by Diane McKinney Whetstone. In some ways, Lazaretto is like two novels in one. It has two very distinct halves to it. The first half of the book tells the story of the early life of two brothers that are orphans raised together in an orphanage by an African-American woman who works there and kind of acts as their surrogate mother. Her own baby by her white master has passed away on the night of Lincoln's assassination. And coincidentally, this is also the same night that one of the two brothers was delivered to the orphanage. The first half of this book is really sort of straightforward historical fiction about race and colorism and class and women's rights in the Reconstruction era. The second half of the book takes place at the Philadelphia Quarantine Hospital, which is called the Lazaretto, so hence the name. And this takes place a couple of decades later, where the lives of several characters from the first half of the book all intersect on the evening of a wedding between two African-American staff members at the Lazaretto Hospital. A manhunt and a case of mistaken identity give this second half more of a suspense type feel, and many questions from the first half are answered in the dramatic ending. So this is a really unique novel with a lot of great historical detail about everyday life for African Americans in the North after the Civil War, as well as details about life at the Lazaretto Quarantine Hospital, which I found really, really fascinating. I did this book with my book discussion group, and we had a very interesting interesting conversation about it. All right, next up I have Conjure Women by Afia Atakora. And this haunting novel follows three women. Maybelle, who is a conjure woman, which is kind of a combination of an herbalist and midwife and a creator of curses for hire. Rue is her daughter, to whom she passes on her skills. And Verena is the daughter of the slave master who grew up with Rue. The narrative moves backward and forward in time between slavery time and freedom time, which is how they refer to it in the novel. And it shows how these women's lives intertwine with each other and with the other African Americans in the community. The former slaves stay on the plantation after the war, even though their master sort of runs away and abandons it. And Verena, the daughter of the master, stays on in hiding, fearing retribution. Honestly, for many of the people that live on the plantation, their life doesn't really change all that much because the plantation was so isolated and their world was so confined, both before and after the war. At the center of this story is an unusual baby with pale skin and dark eyes that was born with a caul. And many in the town fear him, especially as other children start to fall sick and Rue struggles to cure them. This is based in part on narratives, real narratives of formerly enslaved people that were gathered by the Works Project Administration in the 1930s. And this novel is just very complex and deeply affecting. And I really love the cover. They always say don't judge a book by its cover, but this one has a particularly, affecting cover. So definitely check this one out. Okay, next I have In West Mills by Deshaun Charles Winslow. This book is set in the mid-20th century in North Carolina, and it tells the story of Azalea Center, who is known to the rest of the town as Not. And this is a really apt name because she's something of a complicated woman who is difficult to untangle. She loves moonshine and partying and the company of men and classic literature, particularly Dickens. And as the book starts, she is just about to turn 27, which is past the age that others think that she should be settling down. And her current boyfriend has just left her because he really can't deal with her alcoholism anymore, which has really started to become quite pronounced. And she's alienated most of the people in the town except for her best friend Otis Lee and his wife Pep. They are only a few years older than Not, but Pep is very sort of motherly towards her. And Otis is something of a problem-solving type. And she definitely has a big problem to solve because it turns out that she is pregnant. So they are determined to help Not sort her life out, and the book follows Not over several decades, and it's really great to read a historical fiction novel about an African American woman who just lives her life exactly the way that she wants to, maximizing her own freedom and her own self-expression. This would be a great book for anyone who liked Their Eyes Were Watching God, like I did, and are looking for more independent, spirited women like in that vein. Okay, next up I have The Compton Cowboys by Walter Thompson Hernandez. This is nonfiction. This book is about the last of the Compton Cowboys, who belong to an organization that runs a ranch in the Los Angeles area that used to be rural, but is now known, Compton is now known for kind of its crime and its rap scene since at least the 1990s. The Compton Cowboys have attempted to hold onto and pass down the tradition of Black cowboys that came from both former slaves that stayed on as paid labor on ranches in the West, as well as members of the African American cavalry that was created after the Army Reorganization Act. The Buffalo Soldiers that, which is what the African American cavalry were known as, they were credited with protecting national park land, putting out wildfires, but they were also tasked with controlling the Native American population in the Great Plains. So kind of a complicated legacy. Um, but these Compton Cowboys are trying to like reclaim this history of Black cowboys, which is not really widely known in greater American history. It's also an organization that provides some stability and belonging for its members um, as kind of an alternative to gang life. But I will say that this, book shows that the trauma and influence of their surroundings is really hard to escape. The book is a good example of the kind of work that straddles memoir and journalism. The author actually grew up nearby Compton in Huntington Park, and he is a mixed race African and Mexican American, although he didn't know the Black part of his family until he was in his 20s. He recalls having a fascination with the Compton Cowboys when he was a kid, and he easily relates to the challenges of the current members as he interviews and follows them for this book. So it's really a fascinating look at a group that is attempting to honor the past as a means of surviving in the here and now. All right, and then my last book is forthcoming. It's coming out on March 2nd. It's The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This is actually the first book in a new series about a former Underground Railroad conductor who, now that the war is over, has settled in Philadelphia with her husband. She used to use her smarts and her magical abilities to help people escape slavery. And like now that the war is over, she just can't help, she just can't stop helping people. So now she's using her unique skill set to solve crimes that the Philadelphia police won't touch, namely those crimes that are committed against African Americans. But the crime starts hitting uncomfortably close to home when a good friend of her and her husband's turns up dead in an alley. And, she's even more motivated to solve this crime than usual. I think this is going to be a really great addition to the fantasy mystery genre, which really could use a lot more diverse voices, diverse authors and characters. And Publishers Weekly says, quote, readers will be surprised but gratified by an ending that shows just how past actions inform the present in unexpected ways. Glover is a writer to watch. So I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and when I'm off the clock, and so I'm really excited about this one. I think it's going to be fun. All right. Next up, we have Yoli. Take it away, Yoli.
Hey everyone. So my first book that I'm going to talk about is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. Such a Fun Age is Reed's debut novel, and it just tells the story of a young woman named Emira who's kind of floundering a bit in life and trying to figure out who she is after recently graduating from college. The book opens, she's called at like 2 a.m. to come babysit for the white family's daughter who she looks after, and she's recorded in the grocery store and almost arrested. I like this book because I think it does a really great job of exploring Amira from the perspective of her employers, her friends, and herself. I found it to be very relatable, especially with current events and everything going on in the world, while also not being very preachy. I just thought it was really interesting, and I would recommend it to anyone who's looking for a fast-paced novel that's also very timely. My next novel is The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. A lot of people are probably familiar with Coates because he is a journalist on staff at The Atlantic, and he also wrote We Were 8 Years in Power and Between the World and Me. I was really interested in this book because I was interested to see his thoughts on slavery from how he writes about the current perspective of Black people in America. The novel follows a young man named Hiram Walker, who was born to an enslaved woman named Rose and her white master. He cannot remember anything about his mother, but he has a special power that allows him to join the Underground Railroad. And that's all I'll say because I don't want to give away any of the book because it is absolutely fantastic. I think that Coates does a wonderful job of balancing writing about a topic like slavery as well as the fantasy aspect of the book. So the novel explored the question of like, what if running away from slavery involves some kind of magic that we can't comprehend? And Coates spends the entire novel unraveling how memory and what is taken from those in bondage can also lead them to freedom. And I just thought that it was fantastic. It was also kind of a coming of age novel because throughout the novel we see Hiram grow into himself, and start to feel and kind of own who he is outside of the gaze of his white father, who he also is on the plantation, or also the other abolitionists and people working in the underground. And it was probably one of my favorite books of 2020. Even if I hadn't selected it for this program, I was really excited to read it. My next book was Deacon King Kong, which I honestly picked it up on the whim at work. I didn't know if I would like it at all. I'd actually never read any of James McBride's work before, even though I know he is a very good and prolific author. Deacon King Kong kind of takes place in 1968 Brooklyn, but it's also kind of a fantastical Brooklyn. We get to know the inhabitants of the Cause Project and the members of the 5-Inch Church, the local police, and also the fading Italian community who is leaving as the community becomes more Black and Latinx. The novel centers around Deacon King Kong and a shooting. But every turn of the novel, I found it so interesting because at every turn of the novel, I was constantly surprised by everything that happened. You thought that you knew the motivations of one character, and then something would happen a few pages later and surprise you. One of my favorite aspects about this book is that it is a story of redemption and second chances. There's so many characters in this novel who seem like maybe they don't have anything redeemable about them, or you think you know where they're going, and then something happens and you learn that there's always a way that you can change or love somebody or meet someone that you didn't know. There's a love story in here between two of the characters. And again, I won't say too much because it's really wonderful to read about. But it was just a great novel about neighborhood and the people in the neighborhood and just everyday life, but the minute things that you may not be looking for if you're not sitting there and sitting with the novel and just reading it and enjoying it. So my next book was Black Bottom Saints. And I'm talking about this book because I loved this book. It's by Alice Randall, and I think she just did a fantastic job of illustrating 1968 Detroit. The book is historical fiction, but it contains like 50 characters who are mostly real life people, including the protagonist, Ziggy Johnson, who is on his deathbed and writing this book of saints. And, you know, it has like Dinah Washington and just different performers from Motown's heyday. And actually, while I was reading the book, I would see names that I recognized and little details that sounded like, oh, did that happen? I'm not sure. And I would stop and kind of just go and Google to see what was fiction and what was reality. So I like books that kind of blend fiction and reality. The the book also had like at the end of the chapters, it contained like real cocktails that you can make. So as I was reading the book, I kind of started making some of the cocktails, and that was fun. It was just something fun to do, especially as a lot of us are quarantined. It was, you know, you can read a book and make a cocktail, and it's kind of just made me feel more connected to the book. I really enjoyed this book because it just transported you to the time within. And I enjoyed the running narration of Ziggy Johnson as well as Colored Girl. Also, her name was Marie. She was a student of his at his dance studio. And I just really enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys historical fiction that's also based a bit in reality. My next novel was Queenie by Candace Carty Williams. Uh, this book explores the intersections of race, gender, and mental health. Queenie is a young Black woman who, at the beginning of the novel, she breaks up with her white boyfriend, and she's kind of just confused about what to do and what that means for her and who she is. I actually found this book really uncomfortable at times because so much of what she is going through, she's 25, I felt that it was very relatable. And also just seeing how Williams chose to tell this story was both really interesting and also uncomfortable. I enjoyed this book a lot. Queenie was really flawed. She would go on these dates, and sometimes you're sitting there and you're reading the book and you're so uncomfortable as it's happening. But then you just kind of, I would close the book and just kind of sit with it a little bit and think about what I've read. And then there's like a traumatic event that happens towards the end of the book that I won't talk about because that would be a huge spoiler. But it leads us to this really wonderful mental health breakthrough that you don't often see in fiction books. And I just really loved how the author took this character and also showed us how characters can be flawed, but that also there is room to grow, and that's okay. Again, it was a little uncomfortable, but if you're okay with getting a little uncomfortable and having to sit with the book and think about it, I would definitely recommend it. All right, so last but not least is Revival Season. It is the debut novel from Monica West, and it is slated to be released on June 15th. So after I read, especially Deacon King Kong, Black Bottom Saints, and Ta-Nehisi Coates, I was kind of on this kick for like historical fiction or books that kind of centered around churches and community because I really enjoyed those themes in these books. And that's how I came upon Revival Season. So it centers around a 15-year-old girl named Miriam, and her family goes back to the South for a summer. And she discovers that her father, who is a preacher, has secrets that she doesn't know about. There's also a magical aspect to this book, as with the water dancer, that her father is a healer, and that's a part of what makes him such a good preacher, but also a big part of what kind of causes Miriam to start questioning herself and her family and who she is. I'm excited about this book because it sounds like a coming of age novel that leads to the character kind of discovering herself and her family through her past. If any of you have ever used our novelist program, it kind of, I think it would be suggested along with The Water Dancer and Deacon King Kong because they all have that kind of magical realism to them while also an historical and community aspect.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Yoli. Next up, we have Harry. Go ahead and take it away, Harry.
Thanks, Sarah. First, I want to second Yoli's pick of Deacon King Kong. So you liked Sopranos, you liked The Wire. It is so hysterically funny as well as humane. So I loved Deacon King Kong. My first book is Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. I know you're dying to read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, but this is really the mother of The Vanishing Half. Jacqueline Woodson has been around a long time and is just as good a writer as Britt Bennett. In this book, an unexpected pregnancy brings two families together from very different social classes. And the book starts with 16-year-old Melody having her coming of age party. The issue is, how did we get here? This book is an amazing book about identity, sexual desire, class, and family history. It's easy to read, it's gripping. My evening book discussion at the library loved it. My second book is The Yellow House by Sarah Broom. This is a 2019 National Book Award winner. It's a memoir of her growing up in New Orleans East. If you've been to New Orleans pre-Katrina, New Orleans was a very and probably still is, a very segregated city. So she grew up in one of the poorest, most desperate parts of New Orleans in a little shotgun house in a large family. Then Katrina comes and the family gets scattered all over. The author goes away to work and goes away to college, comes back and finds everybody gone, and the house has been condemned. How did this happen? This is a powerful book about family, race, and government neglect. So I highly recommend The Yellow House. My next book is a horror book. So the author listened to accounts of the Ku Klux Klan that were collected by the Works Progress Administration in the 1930s. And the people who were interviewed referred to the Klansmen as monsters. The author, who grew up in Houston and was steeped in the Houston hip hop culture, as well as, if you read his interviews, Beyonce videos and other things, came up with the idea of a ring shout. If you go on YouTube, you can see what ring shouts are. They're dances that were inspired by African slaves who then went to the low part of Carolinas, the Gullah Geechee culture. And in this book, you have 3 young Black women, and each one has a special talent. One is a bomb maker, one is an expert marksman, and the third one wields a magic sword. And they are out to get Klansmen. And the Klansmen are monsters. This book is fast, funny, and violent. It is a horror novel, but it's extremely entertaining and well written. My next book is the book that you're probably on a waiting list for. I just looked on Libby, and we own 145 copies, and there's 4 people waiting for each copy of this book. It is an amazing book. Britt Bennett has taken a trope that has been around for years about someone who's Black wanting to pass as white, but she's refashioned it and written an amazing book about it. What you have in this book is twin sisters who run away from home. One of them moves to Washington, D.C., gets into an abusive marriage, and moves back home. The other one, who can pass for white, moves to Los Angeles and then starts a whole career passing as a white person, becomes famous. What happens when their children meet up later? I don't want to spoil the plot, but you can imagine the daughter who moves back home is wondering, what happened to my sister? I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It was picked as the Goodreads 2020 Best Historical Novel. 17 studios bid for the rights to this book, and it is going to be made into a mini series by HBO. So put yourself on the hold list, read it and enjoy it, but read Jacqueline Woodson first and see what you think. My next book is Wild Thing, about Jimi Hendrix. So Jimi Hendrix dies at the age of 27. What could they write about a guy who dies at the age of 27? How much could there be? Actually, there's quite a lot. The book is more about his life than about his music. So yes, listen to his music, but this is about how he grew up. He grew up poverty-stricken and shy in Seattle, Washington. He is bumming around on the East Coast and then lands in London, where he is discovered during the swinging 60s. So it's an amazing book about not only his musical skill, but where he came from. The author is the first biographer to have access to Jimi Hendrix's brother. And it's fascinating to hear what happened with his music and the rights to it, and whether that helped or hindered his family at all. My last book, since I love mysteries as much as Sarah loves science fiction, is an upcoming mystery novel by Colson Whitehead, who is the very talented author of the Nickel Boys and the Underground Railroad. This is a book about, it's set in 1960s Harlem, and on 125th Street, Ray Carney is a furniture salesman, but he comes from a family of hoods. And of course, when people come to him and they want him to fence some stolen guns from a planned heist at the Waldorf Hotel in Harlem, who is he to say no? He's got needs. He wants to support his family, move up in the world. What could possibly go wrong? I think this is going to be a tremendous book. If you've read anything by Colson Whitehead, he can write across genres. I'm a mystery lover. I think this is going to be like a Black Sopranos novel. So I'm really looking forward to it. I will return it to Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks, Harry. So if that was not enough suggestions for you, if you're looking for more reading suggestions, I'd like to suggest our personalized reading list service. This is a form on our website that you can fill out and tell us what kinds of books you like and don't like. And in about a week or less, we will send you a list of 5 titles that we think that you might be interested in. You can find this on our website under the Books, E-Media, and More tab. So try that out if you want some suggestions that are tailored just to your taste. Thank you so much for coming to this virtual program. We wanted to tell you about a couple of upcoming virtual programs that you might be interested in since you are such a book lover. Coming up on Tuesday, March 2nd, Harry is going to be presenting about some mystery picks for 2021. And then in celebration of Women's History Month, we have a virtual program called What Would She Read? And this one's going to be really fun. Myself and 3 other presenters are going to pick a woman from history, talk about one book about her, and then 5 other books that we think she would read if she were alive today. So yeah, check that out. I will put links to both of these programs in the follow-up email, but you can also find these 2 programs as well as a ton of other really great virtual programs by going to our library's events calendar. All right. So does anyone have any questions for us? Our presenters, all of our presenters can turn on your cameras and microphones if you like. And our chat monitor, Rebecca, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions from attendees just yet, but I have a couple questions for you guys, actually. I know that these great programs where staff are introducing new books to folks and you get to share what to read next. That's wonderful to help other folks, but how do you as staff, how do you find what to read next for yourself all the time? What kind of resources do you use?
Well, I'm going to use Harry. No, I just, The Vanishing Half was a really, really great book. And so I just second that as really good. Also, I honestly just, looking at the shelves and just seeing, I mean, I know right now you have to virtually browse, but if you just go to Encore and just maybe just look at some of the covers, I am one of those people who usually chooses a book by its cover first and then reads the jacket and I go from there.
I get a lot of recommendations from book pages. I use book pages a lot. I use Twitter a lot. I follow a lot of authors on Twitter. So I use social media and book pages, and I look at all the new books that come out. So I love, Tuesdays. Yeah, I look at all the
first
new books.
look, Tammy. It's nice.
I know, we get the first look, and I love it. I love getting the first look. So that's how I find my books.
I get a lot of newsletters I've signed up for an absolute ton of newsletters about books, publishers newsletters. I get a couple of newsletters by a website called Shelf Awareness. They have one for readers that comes out once a week, and then they have one for professionals that work in the book industry like us that comes out every day. And I get both of those. I also, I'm signed up for, the library has something called Library Aware newsletters. You can find those linked under the Books, e-media, and more section of our website. And those are genre based. I've signed up for all of them for professional development reasons. But I would suggest that you sign up for the ones that are of interest to you. There's various genres to sign up for. So yeah, I just get like tons of suggestions that come in on my inbox. And then I put a bunch of them on hold before they even come out. And then of course, like 30 of them come in at once. Yeah, I don't know.
That's exactly what happens. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that suggestion about library aware. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat so attendees can learn more about that and sign up. Harry, do you have any other suggestions? Oh, turn on your mic, Harry.
Sorry. I use Twitter a lot too, like Tammy does. And there are library trade magazines that you can also read on as the public. There's an app called Flipster, which St. Charles Library has. And then you can get the magazines like Publishers Weekly, Book List, and Library Journal on that. You can also get them through our library, I think on Master File Elite. But I'm like Tammy, I follow a lot of things on Twitter, and I'm on Goodreads. I get picks from that.
Yeah, too.
So I have about 100 books on hold at any one time. Like,
Oh, wow. Wow.
yeah, 50 from our system and then 50 from another system.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. That sort of leads into a question that an attendee had, which is just basically so many books and so little time. How many books do you read per year?
I would say I average 24 to 30 books a year. I tend to read about 2 books a month. I'm not a huge, I'm not as fast of a reader as I would like to be, although I do a lot on audio, and you can listen to audiobooks on double speed. So
Yep.
I always used to read at least 2 books a month because of book group that I led. And then sometimes I would sneak in a third one that was like just for me. But you know, Harry and I, because of our jobs, we have to know about a lot of books. So I do get a lot of books that come in and I check them all out, but I don't always read all of them cover to cover. I do just so that I know a lot about books so I can help people. I will read the jacket. I'll read a couple of chapters and the inside. Sometimes I read the end. And then, but I don't always read every book cover to cover that I check out, even though I do probably check out hundreds of books a year. But I can't read as many fully as I would like.
I read about 10 to 20 a year. I really get going in the summer for the summer reading club because I have a little bit more time. But usually 10 to 20 a year. I skim a lot like Sarah. I skim through books all the time just so I know about them. But usually it's 10 to 20 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read about 100 a year.
Wow.
Oh.
That's amazing.
But I'm like Sarah, I got the tip from her about the audio. So Sarah, every morning I walk for about an hour and I listen to audio on double speed. It was a good tip.
Yeah, I used to have more opportunity to do audio because I would listen to it in the car, but we don't commute as much now. So sad.
Yeah, sad. What about you, Yoli?
I read anywhere from 10 to 20 books a year. Last year I read 12 books, but the year before that I think I read 25. My goal was 10 and I had to keep changing it. Also, I second audiobooks. They're amazing, and sometimes it's really I read and listened to The Water Dancer, and listening to Joe Morton read that book was wonderful. It was great. He's so expressive. It was a lot better than just my voice in my head.
I love that. For me, I always have my reading goal sort of match my age for that year. So I just sort of go up a book, go up a book, go up a book, but I'm stopping at 50, you guys.
Just like this is.
I was gonna say that's gonna get hard, in that decade before you retire. where
You're
you're
so right, Sarah. I
trying to
know.
get up there in years, but still.
Maybe that's a reason to retire early. We'll find out. So another question came in. Do any of the presenters have recommendations for fantasy or YA fantasy books by Black authors, especially some hidden gems?
Yeah, I would say for fantasy, my favorite fantasy series is the Akata Warrior series, especially if you're kind of like a Harry Potter fan, because she's sort of like a chosen one and she has her little band of friends. That would be a favorite of mine. Also the Children of Blood and Bone. No, yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That one is a really great series too, a YA series. And actually that's a YA series that I just talked about at our Books for Teens and the Young at Heart, because I think it's one that adults would like too. It's like complex enough that adults would like it a lot too. So those would be my two like first suggestions. I don't know.
Those are good suggestions. I also like N.K. Jemisin myself.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, if you're looking for adult sci-fi, I mean, honestly, I think N.K. Jemisin isn't just like the best African American sci-fi writer out there. I think she's the best sci-fi writer like currently out there.
Currently, yes, I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
She's up
like
there, agreed.
the new George R. R. Martin, in my opinion.
Oh, I love that, Sarah.
Wow.
Does anyone know if there are any upcoming book clubs available for any of these books listed? Or if you want to instead chat about the book clubs that you're leading for the system instead, because I'm sorry we can't answer that question right away.
Yeah, we don't keep a master list of like the upcoming titles, but you can see the upcoming titles are listed in the description of the book discussion groups. You can limit, so when you go to our library's events calendar under event type, you can limit it just to book discussions, and then all the current ones will come up. And of course, right now they're all virtual, so it doesn't really matter where the leader is from. You can attend any one you want. I do have a Mocktails book group that is more of like a book chat. So we read, it's actually coming up next Monday, a week from today, where we have a loose theme and anyone can like read along that theme or bring suggestions along that theme. And then myself and my co-host Denise, we always have two books that we've read along the theme, and we have a themed mocktail too. That's like a cocktail with no alcohol. So yeah, and then everyone gets to like, so the first like, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, Denise and I talk about our books and our mocktail, and then we open it up so that everyone can share their reading suggestions. So that's my book group right now. I know Harry has a mystery book group.
I have a mystery group that meets this week, and I have an evening group that meets next Tuesday night. So the mystery group, it's all mysteries, thrillers, things like that. And then the evening group is diverse literary fiction.
Tammy, Yoli, do you have any book groups for the system?
I had a book group for the system. I don't have any right now. But I do have a couple of programs that are coming up that have books attached to them. So one is coming up February 18th, is Family Craft Night, and we're reading Leaving Lyman. It's a children's book. It's great. I read it. It's about the Great Migration. And he was a musician, a young musician. So we're going to make guitars out of paper plates. So that's February 18th, and you can sign up on the library's website.
That's wonderful, Tammy. That'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the True Crime Book Club, but we're not doing anything right now. And so I don't have anything.
To be continued later, Yoli.
Yes.
Yeah, some of our book groups kind of went on hiatus when we went to virtual programming. But we'll have new programs too, in-person programs whenever that occurs.
There was.
Oh, thank you, Emily.
Oh yeah, thanks, Emily. I saw that.
Let's see. So one other question from an attendee. Out of all the authors given tonight, which are like the easy reading? This individual likes easy reading novels. Like I assume like page turners and like maybe audiobooks would be really good for that.
Yeah.
As well.
If you like romance, easy reading, Rebel by Beverly Jenkins. It's a paperback, excuse me, it's handy, and it's a great story. And if you want to, people, a lot of people don't read romance, but I say give it a try. She has tons of books. I'm waiting for her new book to come out, Wild Rain. So it's an easy read. It's a paperback. She has tons of books. So if you like romance, then I'd go with that one. And it's an easy read.
Thanks, Tammy.
I would recommend Such a Fun Age. I don't think that the subject matter is always easy, but there's enough humor and in it that it went by really fast. I think I read it in like 4 days. I read the first half of it in one sitting, and I was just wondering what I was doing with my life. But it's really good if you want a fun, easy read.
That's a good book, Yoli.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is.
For me, I would say Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. She was a young adult author. So her books are very easy to read, but they're deep. But you can get through it quickly.
Of my picks, I would say In West Mills by Winslow. That one is it's got some humor in it, and I don't know if like heartwarming is quite the right word, but it is kind of like that. It's just a good story about a woman who is like living her life the way that she wants to. So of mine, that's probably the easiest read. We had a lot of heavy picks tonight, so I kind of get it.
You're right. Well, those are all the questions that have come in. So yeah, thank you all for presenting this wonderful information and wonderful reading picks for all of us. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit more about the recording of this event? And then
yeah, well, we have just started recording some of our webinar content, and I have recorded this one. I hope. Record button. So we'll be uploading this to YouTube. It'll stay up for at least a month, and it should be available in about 3 business days. But I will include a link to the library's YouTube page in the follow-up email so that you can take a look at it. Feel free to share it to anyone that you think might be interested that wasn't able to come tonight, or if you want to rewatch parts of tonight's program, maybe you didn't catch a title or you want to see a cover again, it'll be up there on YouTube for you for about the next month.
thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We were really excited to kick off Black History Month. We have a ton of other Black History Month programs. You can look at our events calendar using the keyword search Black History Month. That's going to be in the description of all of our special programming. So we hope you will come to one of those other programs. But that is it. So thank you for coming tonight. We're all going to turn off our cameras and microphones. I will leave the program running for another couple of minutes so that you can copy any information you need out of the chat, or copy down our email address if you have any follow-up questions. But I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.